Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
Doing excellent, Jordan. It's warm down here in Florida, so it's always good
Cold
when it's a
up
warm
here.
day. I know. I've seen like the snowstorms. I watched the football on Sunday, and the whole Northeast looked like it was getting wintry up there.
It's all fog, rain, cold. That's kind of what it's been like up here. I think today was like the first time I really had to use my ice scraper on the car. Make sure to get that frost off of there so I could see and be able to drive. So yeah. So it's been a good bit of time. It's been a week. We now have the MLS Cup scheduled, right? It is coming up on Saturday. We know who's going to play in it. We'll preview that stuff later. But there's also been a flurry of news, not just in the Northeast, but flurry of news about all of these MLS teams and stuff that they are doing. So we'll kind of go over that stuff first. Um, but I'm excited to dive into this. It should be a pretty heavy episode. Lots of stuff to talk about this week as we build up to MLS Cup 2023. All right. So what we have today. Let's start off with I think the news that shouldn't have shocked me, but did, that Frank Klopas is now the full head coach of Chicago Fire again. He's been interim a few times. He's been the coach before, but I wanted to point this out. If people saw like Tom Bogert's tweet about it, I think it was where it was, they haven't made the playoffs in this many years and all this kind of stuff. They haven't won an MLS Cup since 1998, like that kind of stuff. It's time to start putting pressure on Chicago, I think. This is a different ownership group, by the way, like than some of the bad Chicago Fire teams we've had. They kind of got purchased around the time of the Bastian Schweinsteiger stuff, right? And then it was rebrand after rebrand, and then now they're like, we're going to give it to Ezra Hendrickson. He's going to be able to do this. All right, they gave him 10 games this year after last season. And then they're like, back to Klopas, right? And then they get him. And I want to know if this is good enough, right? This is what I want to know, Logan. They had, when Hendrickson got fired, it was May 8th, I believe. I looked it up. May 8th. They had 2 wins, 5 draws, 3 losses. So they had 11 points in 10 games. And they said, see ya. You're out of here. Now they bring in Frank Klopas. He comes in. They missed out on the wild card by 3 points. 9 points if you're going to go non-wild card spots, which really should be the goal for most of these teams, I think. Right? I mean, it just shows how far off they were on that. Klopas comes in 8 wins, 5 draws, 11 losses. That's 29 points in 24 games, which is how many points per game? I guess I should have calculated that earlier today, but it is 1.2 points per game. If I take a look at the standings from this year, usually they show points per game on here, right? Let me see where that kind of falls into. 1.2 points per game would still have them, if you stretch that throughout the whole season. Let me make sure I have the right numbers here because it's a little bit closer than I thought it would be. All right, hold on. 29 divided by 24 is 1.208 points per game. And you know where that puts them, Logan? Still out of the playoffs. Because Montreal, who missed the playoffs by 2 points, had a 1.21 points per game. So even if you want to round it up, to 1 because it was 1.208, still missing the playoffs because the team that made the play-in is a 1 point. So in my mind, this is not a good result from Klopas. Doesn't deserve to be a full head coach for this team right now. I swear they're going to miss the playoffs again next year. They might fire him 10 games in.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this multiple times because we've talked about their move into Soldier Field from, I forget the outerlying neighborhood they were in.
Bridgeview or Bridgeport
Bridge,
or something.
Yeah, something like that. And they moved into Soldier Field, and Soldier Field's not necessarily a great field. The Bears even don't like the field too much, but I think it's got so much history. It's kind of just there to stay. It needs upgrades. I think there's a lot of problems, right? They've always had personnel problems. I think they thought that Casper Shabelko, they thought, Shaqiri would come over, Galvo. Like they've had a number of guys that they brought in that I think they thought were just going to, take this team to the next level. It's never worked out that way. So then they decided to kind of do this reboot, right? Keeping similar players, but also adding in a Kai Kamara. You got Fabian Erber. I don't know. Like it just seems like they hit reset and add these really weird pieces that don't fit. Chris Mueller. Like I feel like this team just signs people's castaways, and they're like, you know what, this feels like it's going to be a good move forward in the direction that we need to go in as a club. And I'm not sure this is it. And obviously he's had, seasons where he's maybe had some success as a Chicago Fire coach, but not relatively great endings to the seasons. I know he's had a 49, 43, and 29 record as the head coach of the Chicago Fire. And we'll talk about this again.
Yeah, a winning record by like 4 games.
Right.
After how many times he's coached them.
Right. And we're going to talk about this again because we're going to talk about another head coaching situation where interim coaches seem to be the hot ticketed item, which we'll get into, I guess, and we can kind of bridge and transition into the next one. But again, I just feel like this is just a Band-Aid. This is a temporary fix. There's got to be coach. Like, are we in the well and it's dry? Like, is that where we've come to?
Chicago is. They're like, all right, so here, seriously, after this, they're gonna hire somebody else, and then when that guy gets fired, they're gonna be like, bring back Klopas. We gotta get him back in as an interim.
He's literally the Allardyce of
but it's going to the same team every time, right? Instead.
Yeah, if there's no relegation he's saving them from. He's just saving them from wooden spoon contention.
Yeah, saving them from themselves, I guess. I don't know. I don't know, man. They finished 13th in the East. I don't know if that was good enough. He had almost the full season. He had 24 out of 34 games at 1.20 points per match, which doesn't make the playoffs over a full season. For me, I think this is like just a mistake. This is like you said, they're kind of like, they must think the well is dry. They're like, oh, we got to just keep going with this, I mean, they finished 24th in Major League Soccer in 2022. By the way, they have been this surprised me. This was their 4th season back at Soldier Field. And I feel like they've not really done much, right? Like they haven't really done anything there. I mean, I guess the only good thing I see from this is the that he somehow only got 5 draws after Ezra had 5 draws in 10 games. Like for 24 games, he only had 5 more draws. But I mean, it really isn't that much of a difference. I'm trying to find the last time they were in the playoffs, by the way. And,
I think it was 2021, wasn't it? Or they were close, I thought.
I think it might be 2017.
Really? I thought they were close first. I remember somebody talking about them and like they were going on a run, but maybe it was just because they were on a run a little bit. And then...
I think it may have been that they were on a run close to. I'm trying to find this out. Let me go back to their. Okay, so did not qualify 2023, 2022. Did not qualify.
It
2021.
yeah, 2017, I believe, was the year. You're right. Because it says they finished
2021 did not qualify.
2019 would have been the other year that they would have been close, I would think, because
2020 did
they
not
finished
qualify.
17th in the whole league.
Yeah, it was 2017. That's 6 years ago.
Dang. That's wild. And they, like, man, just
Their head
looking at
coach
this,
was
they've been
Paunovic
bad.
back then. It wasn't even Klopas. It was one of the rare
But
times it wasn't.
they've been bad, Jordan, since like 2014, 2015. 2015.
Yeah, well, 2017 they finished third in MLS, and then that was their one good year. They didn't qualify. 2015 they didn't qualify. They finished last overall in the league. They did not qualify in 2014 either. They did win the Brimstone Cup, which is just a trophy against them in Dallas. So reached the semis of the Open Cup. I remember the Union knocked them out that year. They or 2013 they knocked them out. They knocked them out one of those 2 years. The Union, I think it was 14 because 2013 the Union did not reach that far. I don't think. But yeah, I mean, then they didn't qualify in 2013 either. They qualified for the knockout round in MLS playoffs in 2012. So what? In the last 11 years, 2 appearances, 2012 and 2017, I think is what we just discovered there.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
And have no path forward at all. Like, they don't even have that young of a player that's exciting because Gaga's gone.
This
At least that was exciting.
This is what pisses me off the most, honestly, is when you go back to a coach like Klopas, who is a fine coach. He's all right. But it's not bringing any sort of new vision. It's nothing that's going to change the club in a fundamental way to push yourself forward. So what's the plan here? You keep them for this year, and then as well, you're like, okay, we keep them again. But what's doing well, right? Well, is it just not coming in last? Is the goal playoffs? The goal should be playoffs. Almost every team gets into the playoffs. It's frustrating. And I know people are probably like, it's MLS Cup week. Why are you spending so much time on the Chicago Fire? I do think we have to highlight this type of stuff every so often because I think coaches and organizations in this league are getting away with this type of stuff too much right now. They're not trying. And we'll talk about Minnesota, who is also not trying, I feel like. They're going to keep their manager at an interim title instead of either naming him as coach or finding somebody else. I remember they were looking. This was Sean McAuley, if I said that right, was the interim head coach. He took over at the very, very end, right? Because the 2 remaining games. But they were looking, because I remember reading some stuff from Minnesota press and all that were like, hey, I think they were looking at maybe Phil Neville, because once he got taken by Portland, people were like, oh, there's a name off of Minnesota's list. That's mind-boggling to me, for one. I know Adrian Heath was there forever. He was the only coach so far. But you're going to roll into next year with an interim coach who had 2 games of coaching, where I don't think that's enough to say if it's good or bad. But I feel like for a new season, you want your full coach. So you either make them the coach and you say, this is your team. I can fire you whenever I want. Like, if I'm the owner or the GM, I can fire you 3 games in if I want to, but I'm naming you the coach because I don't want press conference questions that are like all the time, like, all right, so he's the interim. Do you think you've earned the right to now be the full-time coach? Which we know are going to be questions directed at the coach, especially if he goes out there and wins 5-0 in his first game. They'll be like, do you think you've done everything to make yourself the coach? And he'll be like, yeah, I hope I'm the coach. And then the GM can be like, what, 5 games in the season, right? We're taking the interim tag off. I feel like you're not going to have a better available coach like 10 games into the season. So I would say name them or go find somebody right now. We were just looking at whose list was it that you sent me today?
New England's.
New England's, Bob Bradley, Caleb Porter, MLS Cup winning coaches.
Yeah, Robin
Right?
Fraser.
Robin Fraser. I would be looking at those a lot more than I'd be looking at just keeping an interim tag. Especially he was with the club. This not even like he's probably got some of the same exact mannerisms as Heath in a sense of like the type of system they play and stuff. I don't know. I feel like it would be I don't know. I think if especially when you say these type of quotes, I am personally grateful for Sean's leadership and his willingness to continue in the role. I have full confidence that he and our current staff are best positioned to successfully lead the team at this time, given their collective coaching experience and familiarity with our players and club. All right, so they're that well positioned, but you're not going to name them the full-time coach? That's kind of dumb.
Yeah, so there's some context to it too. Khalid El Ahmad arrives from English side Barnsley FC, who will assume the sporting director position. This Minnesota CEO Sherry Ballard, in a press release today, said that she's personally, I think it's she, is personally grateful for Sean's leadership and his willingness to continue in this role. I have full confidence that he and our current staff are best positioned to successfully lead the team at this time, given their collective coaching experience and familiarity with the club and our players. Jordan, the article goes on to state that McAuley was with Adrian Heath in Orlando City. He's been with Minnesota United for his 6th year. This will be his 7th. It just
it's
like
Heath 2.0.
I don't
right?
get it.
I mean,
like I
that's
don't
what
understand. Even if it's not January, like find somebody, right? Like, come on, you can't be that busy at Barnsley if you're leaving to not be able to let go. Like, I'd imagine Barnsley's ownership and brass would be like, all right, fine, yeah, you've got your duties. Go find a coach, interview coaches. Like, why can't he interview coaches there? Like, see if there's anybody interested in the England side that want to come over and coach Minnesota United. Like, I don't.
Or here's the other thing. Or like wait before saying it on December 5th that he's the interim
Right.
coach going forward still.
Yep.
Like, because you're right. Maybe he will find time. Or right. Or maybe, I don't know. Right. Like there's maybe we also shouldn't hire people that are still overseeing other clubs right now. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can kind of dive into at that I don't want to get into all today. But I mean, it's just dumb. Yeah, I just find it stupid. LA Galaxy have named Will Kuntz as Kuntz, I guess, as general manager. I butchered that. I'm sorry. The club announced that today, creating a shift in roles for the 5-time MLS Cup champs to MLSsoccer.com. Greg Vanney is still returning as the head coach. We've kind of had a debate on that. Like, is that going to be something that will continue? I thought so, yes. I thought, like, this is it. I feel like this is it, right? Like, this is the year that... What are you laughing at?
I'm sorry. I can't. I'm like a child laughing at you. No. Go ahead.
No, I was
Your
just saying...
pronunciation of the name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Thanks. Well, so him and Vanney are going to collaborate on all major soccer operations and decisions.
How do you think that goes? Like, how do you personally?
How do you collaborate on that?
Yeah, like I feel like Vanney's kind of like in the Bob Bradley situation, wasn't he? Very much.
He was
kinda
doing
like the
both,
sporting
but
director.
it was because they didn't have. Well,
One.
Chris Klein was
Oh,
making
no, yeah.
decisions with them, and then when he left, I don't know who that fell on, and then now, yeah. Now there you go. But this is I thought Vanney was going to come back, right? Because I felt like they hired somebody else from LAFC this year, right? To kind of be the Chris Klein replacement, soccer president, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, that person's going to bring in their own person. Here he is. right? We bring him in. And then I'm thinking, Vanny, stop laughing at me like that. Then I was thinking, Vanny, this is like, this is it, right? Like you were under Chris Klein, you had an excuse. Now it's like, this is it. Can you do it or not? And I feel like that is the big question now. We've seen him do it at Toronto. He had a great time there. He's now at LA. He's been struggling, just missing the playoffs, right? Like, or make the playoffs and then get bounced out. But this is it now. I think this is going forward. They've moved on from Chicharito. They're doing all of this. We have a new general manager now. If you're a LA Galaxy fan, if they don't put it together with Vanny this time, I think they're not going to fire the general manager they just hired. It's going to be the manager that goes, and then he'll be able to bring in his own guy, and that'll be how it is.
Yeah, he's one that I thought for sure would end up like you and I talked about it multiple times, where we thought maybe Greg is old. Oh man, we can't. I can't. Oh, Jordan's gone.
I'm good.
Oh man,
I'm good.
You good? All right, good. No, I thought for sure that Manny would be one that was on the hot seat, and one of those coaches too that I thought if he got loose, man, I think there's, and again, and we can do a whole. I think we're going to do a whole episode. We might as well do a whole episode on just the coaching carousel. Just because I feel like
if Vanny got let go, Minnesota would still be like, we're keeping our interim.
They'd be like, you know what, sign me up for more. Chicago would be like, hey, wait a minute, how are we supposed to hire anybody? There's nobody left.
Fire would still pick Klopas, right? Like, I mean,
right.
Yeah. He'd be on the list for the Revs, I think, is where he would be.
Right. So, I don't know. Galaxy, they're a mess. There's a lot of teams like that, and I think it'd be a fun episode just to kind of go over the coaching carousel, because it'll give us some opportunities to kind of dig deeper into some of this, because it'll take forever to talk about some of these teams.
Yeah, time to do a immaculate grid of coaches, right. Like where they've coached in MLS.
Just be a big, and you could put it in like a dumpster that's on fire.
DC United, announced a new general manager, I think a little bit ago, Ali McKay, and they've let go the rest of their staff there. So it's going to be a whole new era for DC United now, because we kind of had the leftovers of the Rooney era, and even before that. Now we're going in to a whole new era for DC United. McKay is only 37. He has already started looking for a new head coach. This is the type of stuff you should be doing, by the way. You could, even if DC United fails with this, it's like, we got a guy that can immediately look for a coach, and we're coach. Like, this is the right way to do things. He's arriving from Nashville SC. I don't know what he did, but he's actually going to be the youngest chief soccer officer in the league. Right. That's pretty interesting. He was a player agent before he joined Nashville. So he's got a long history in the league right now. A huge strategy they used in Nashville was data and analytics, he said. And he said those aspects, I think, are fundamentally important for any club. So I do think this could be, right, if you wanted to go the right way, I think DC's doing a good job on this. They were always like kind of on the cusp with the Rooney stuff the last 2 years. Like this year especially, they were kind of close, couldn't figure it out, fell off. But when I'm looking at this and I say, if I'm trying to replicate Cincinnati, where do I go? Oh, I go get somebody from another good club like Nashville. Boom. Their approach is analytics. Cool. I know a lot of clubs are into that, right? So then you're trying to bring that over here to DC. I think that this can be not to get into previews and stuff, I do think that they can be a good team under, hopefully, they actually give this time to grow. But I think having a GM like this and then he go find his coach is probably a better solution than let's just go get Wayne Rooney for 2 years, see how it. Though that was fun. That was exciting when he was announced to be coming back and everybody's following him in the airport and all that kind of stuff. This is probably, if you want to be a club like Cincinnati or Nashville that are constantly competing. Nashville was in a final for the league's cup, right? And they reached the semis for the Open Cup when they lost to Miami again. And then now, they got to the playoffs again, Nashville. This is, if I'm looking at clubs to emulate, I'm looking at Nashville, I'm looking at Cincy, and I'm looking at Philly, right? If you're a team like DC at the bottom, those are like 3 Eastern clubs you're looking at, and you're like, all right, if we don't have the resources like some teams, we're able to, if we can hire smart, pick off talent from other clubs and build a good team, that's the type of stuff you're trying to grab, I think. And who's to say how it's going to go? But I do think there's reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, so here's a fun little tidbit. McKay was part of a roundtable decision-making structure in Nashville, working alongside GM Mike Jacobs. And Mike Jacobs actually coached McKay during his NCAA playing career at University of Evansville. Ian Ayre, the CEO, Gary Smith, head scout Chance Myers, and data specialist Oliver Miller Farrell were all part of this roundtable. So they would get together and collectively come up with decisions based on what they thought of, data-driven, decision-based, voting as a group, collectively coming together and seeing what they wanted to do with Nashville. And I'd say Nashville's been pretty successful. I think there's some room for growth there. I still think they're missing an attacking piece. But I think if you can replicate somewhat, and he said, we can replicate that to a degree, but every market's different. Every situation's different. I feel like DC is a really good city to be in if you really want to grow a team. There's just never been evidence of a DC team really taking things seriously and winning something. I mean, the Nationals played pretty well there for a little bit, but they've never really invested in the club ever since. I mean, there's times where, because there's times where these DC teams will get to be where they're pretty good. The Wizards had their time in the spotlight a little bit, long time ago. Gilbert Arenas, that's been a really long time. But again,
their biggest accomplishment was getting Michael Jordan to come back.
Right. Right. Well, I'd say the Capitals are pretty good, but I don't watch hockey. So,
no, yeah, they are. No, I meant I meant for the Wizards.
You meant the Wizards? Yeah, that and Gilbert Arenas not shooting his teammates was a huge accomplishment. So, if you don't know that story, go look it up. But it really is. It's interesting to me, Jordan, that they went this direction. I'm excited about this. 37 years old, man. I think you and I are going to get an offer here soon.
Yeah. Oh, we could even be even younger. We could be even younger in the
Jordan and I are ready. You know what? Give us a call. We're ready.
Yeah, we got nothing going on right now. Okay. There's rumors. Let's get into this, I guess, right? That Luis Suarez is coming over to MLS. And that they are going to be signing. He's going to be signing with Inter Miami, of course, right? That's the hot ticket lately. He's got the former connection with Messi. I guess it's happening. I don't know. It seems like more and more build up to it happening, but we'll kind of dive into that more in the off season. Just wanted to kind of say something about that, before we move on, just to address it. But if it actually happens, we'll of course have episodes talking about it. We'll have, but I think that's off-season stuff, when we're looking at that and what it means for the league.
I know our listeners, Jordan, will be chomping at the bit.
Yeah, and he's ready to take a bite out of America here. Okay, moving on from that, we have to get our daily Messi stuff in here. So guess who was announced as Times Athlete of the Year? Lionel Messi.
Oh, Tesho Akadelli. I thought.
No, not this year.
He's not even
but
playing anymore.
my whole thing on this is I saw some people be like, well, he only got it because of his name. All right, let's look at the brief history of this, okay? 2019, the first time they ever did it. U.S. women's national team. Makes sense. They won the World Cup. 2020, LeBron James. I'm guessing because they won the Florida Bowl. 2021, Simone Biles. Olympics, right? 2022, Aaron Judge, I guess for breaking the AL home run record. This year, Lionel Messi. I mean, if you just look at the names that have won this thing, they're usually like one of the biggest stars of that season in their sport. It's obviously the Time Athlete of the Year, which is going to have an American focus. This is the first player to get it that's not American, but obviously cover is Miami gear. They're highlighting it because he is playing over here now. If he was over in Saudi Arabia, he would not be Times Player of the Year. It's because he's playing in the U.S. So when some people say it was his name that got him this, I really don't know, Logan, who else you would give this to this year. There's been so many players, NFL-wise and all that, that have completely gotten injured and out of the sidelined, right? NFL quarterbacks are dropping like crazy. You have he did win a trophy this year. He won a few trophies this year. He came over here and immediately made this team better. It's a good story. He's the biggest star in the world when it comes to soccer. I know Ronaldo has more of a following, I think, on Instagram. But, I mean, if we're talking about better player, right? Baseball, I don't think any player really had, like, that great of a year to be like, oh, he's the Time Player of the Year. Maybe one of the MVPs, like Acuna, who had, like, a ridiculous stolen bases and home run season, right? But I don't know. I feel like if I'm looking at American sports, I can't think of an athlete right now that I'm like, oh, they should have obviously won this over Messi. Unless I'm forgetting.
No, like this is always so tough because like sports, you can't transcend into other sports and kind of make a decision based off of what people like. It's so hard. And I remember when they did this on, like, you remember this, Jordan? It was like a Who Is Now. I forget, but I think it was what it was called on ESPN. And they did like this bracket thing. And I think eventually Tiger Woods ended up winning. And it was like up against LeBron. And like it was this 64 people
That's the thing
bracket.
Too. It can't even be Tiger right now, right?
Right.
Because he hasn't really been on the scene with golf.
He hasn't won anything,
much.
I don't think, this year.
Yeah. So even if you look at some of those more ancillary sports, I can't think of like a huge story. The U.S. women didn't win this year, so they're not going to be featured again.
We didn't really have an Olympics, so
yeah,
or any of the Olympics games.
I mean, maybe the only player I could think of is that they could have made Patrick Mahomes it for winning a second Super Bowl.
That's what I was thinking.
That's the only other player.
How far back are we stretching to? Like, is it just 2023 calendar year?
I think it's the calendar year from what they say.
I mean, this is tough too. Like giving it, I will say, like Messi's had one heck of a stretch there for like a month and a half that he was absolutely insane. So I guess that kind of warrants that because I guess Patrick hasn't really had that. I mean, honestly,
yeah, he's been worse this year. I mean, Mahomes has less weapons and stuff this year too. But I mean,
yeah, I might say this in bias, but I do think if this award's given later, like, don't what.
You gonna say Tua?
No. Tyreek Hill. Because he's going to set the world. He's going to set the NFL record for receiving yards.
He's got a little bit of a past, right? We have a comment here. Perhaps in the U.S., it's more about who influences pop culture. That is true, and this is where I think. Look, LeBron is showing up to his games, right? I think that has something to say with it too. It was the hottest ticket in town. The tickets were going like crazy. You had Olympians, you had pop stars. They were all going to Miami to watch that. I mean, I don't know any other player that's happening for. You have Taylor Swift at Kansas City games, but she's there for Kelsey, not for Mahomes.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Influencing pop culture now. Now, when you're talking that, I don't think there's a bigger influence. I mean, we haven't really gotten to see it. I mean, we saw it for what, a month and a half, right?
I mean, I bought a jersey. I don't do that a lot. So, I mean,
right.
Just goes to show you.
Like, well, I'll tell you, like, this is how big he is. The NFL pretty much has just ignored MLS. The Miami kit is now being modeled with the Dolphins kit, and they're kind of doing this like tandem partnership where they're designing. Did you see this? Did I send this to you?
Yeah, you did.
Their NFL is now interested in what Messi's doing, and like NFL didn't. Miami wasn't even on the radar for the Dolphins, but like now the NFL is like, hey, there's some money making opportunities over there. The Dolphins are going to go in and collab with Inter Miami for a kit. Like,
well, soccer has gotten so big too. Like,
right.
Even if we want to look at some of the celebrations NFL players do now,
yeah,
which are Ronaldo celebration or some other soccer celebration. I saw somebody who was it? I think it was Odell Beckham Jr. or something. Did one after he scored a touchdown with the Ravens, where somebody got in line like he was a goalie, and then he like took a penalty shot.
Yes,
like,
and he saved it.
Yeah, I forget if I forget Ravens or not, but somebody did that, and I was like, geez, like this is becoming really big now. So yeah, I'm fine with him being time player of the year. I just don't. I mean, he's the first American that won't get it. That will. He's the leader of that team. He's the face of the league right now, and like we said, everybody was there watching his games. So, all right. Before we go on to MLS Cup, I know people are probably like, you're 35 minutes into this and you haven't even talked about the big final. Let's real quickly talk about the host cities for Copa America 2024. Some surprising cities. We got 14 cities. We've got 5 MLS stadiums that are hosting, and some of the other ones are bigger stadiums. The group stage starts June 20th, goes till July 2nd. We have the quarterfinals July 4th to the 6th, semifinals July 9th and 10th, the third place match July 13th, and the final July 14th. The final is being held in, you guessed it, and the third place match is going to be held in Charlotte, just where everybody thought that would be. Here's our venues. Las Vegas. Dallas, Texas, the Arlington, AT&T. America Stadium, Charlotte, North Carolina. Children's Mercy Park, Kansas City. Exploria in Orlando. Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City, Missouri. So we have 2 Kansas cities here. We got Children's Mercy and Arrowhead. Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. Levi Stadium, Santa Clara. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta. MetLife in NRG in Houston. Q2 in Austin. SoFi in California. They didn't want to host the World Cup. They'll host a Copa America. State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. So you have one in your neck of the woods. I have New Jersey if I am able to get there. Yeah, there you go. Now, they also have a schedule. We're not going to read that out yet because it's just like A3 versus A4. And we don't know who any of those teams are yet. But the draw for this will be on... Does it say on here? I had it before. It was like
December 7th at 7:30.
Oh, 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 days. So we'll probably talk about that next week after MLS Cup as well. We'll probably look at the draw and see who's going to be playing where and worth it to go to a place to catch the games. But how excited are you? Especially one being near you.
Yeah, really excited. I think it'll be. I want to say it was it's going to be a team. You and I think both games that you and I would possibly go see. The teams are going to be in our group, but it's not us.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But I think we could see the same teams. I think one of them overlap. But I'm really excited. I think it's interesting that the U.S. is in this competition. It's going to put us up against some of the best competition. It's going to put us up against an Argentinian-led Lionel Messi team, I believe, which is really cool if we can get to that stage. But yeah, no, I'm really excited. I think it gives you a nice competition to stay competitive. I think looking at the time frames in which they fall, it'll be before Premier League. So our guys might be a little rusty. That's kind of a concern that I'd have. And European side, a lot of these guys
They'll have
playing.
so much build up. I think they'll have friendlies.
It's true.
They'll probably be fine.
And I will say this: June is typically when they start camps anyway over in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be kind of when they're ramping up. So I think it's the most fresh we will be, but maybe it'll need the most work. But again, I think they'll treat it like a preseason. They're like, you know what, just go to camp and be with your national team and ramp up from there. So no, I'm looking forward to it. It's cool that it's in Miami. I think that's a perfect place when you're talking Copa America, because we do have a lot of Latin influence in Miami. So playing that final there, it's going to be nuts.
I saw a lot of people upset that it's not in more areas, but I think having a lot of South works a lot for this, because South America fans are going to be coming up and they deserve the right to see their team.
Easier access to these cities.
Yeah. It's going to be shorter plane trips for them and stuff. It definitely makes more sense. Okay, let's talk the conference finals that took place over the weekend, as Cincinnati started off hot. Brendan Vasquez, 14 minutes in, and I was like, wow, this is a good start. I was texting my friend Dave. I was like, wow, great start for Cincy. He's rooting for Cincy because he doesn't like the Crew, especially because the Crew knocked out Orlando. And so there you go. Then Acosta, right before half, makes it 2-0. And I was like, all right, this might be over a bit here. Not to like crap on the Crew, but I was thinking like the Crew have had so many chances and they were looking really dangerous. But I was like, wow, them getting that second goal is huge. But I was wrong. Them getting that second goal wasn't that huge, because Columbus comes back, right? Powell own goal in the 75th minute. Diego Rossi in the 86th minute to equalize. And then Christian Ramirez in the 114th minute, assisted by Chucho Hernandez on a great assist. But Columbus finished with 63.1% possession. They had 26 shots to 11. They had 8 shots on goal to 6. So there you go. The Crew were absolutely dominant, I thought. Even at that first half, I was like, wow, they're really, like, Cincy's lucky that they're not at least equal right now. And the Crew just turned it on, and this Wilfried Nancy team is so good. I don't want to keep tooting my own horn, but I did say that they were going to be good. The first week of the season when the Union beat them 4-1, I said, like, they were the most dangerous looking team. That's what it kind of reminded me of in this one, when they were the more dangerous looking team at times, and since he has a lead, and you're like, that doesn't feel right, And then you have in this one where they felt, they were the more dangerous team since he has a lead, and then they come out and they actually put together so many goals and opportunities. And when you get 26 opportunities, 3 are going to go in, and that's exactly what happened in this. Cincinnati sports curse is a bit of a thing. Yeah, I don't know if we can say that much, because they did have the supporter shield. I think it'd almost be like when Philly fans were saying their sports curse was a thing, but they had just won the Super Bowl a few years ago. So like, now obviously Philly has had a tough run of losses in big games recently, but Cincy definitely, they've had some problems, the Super Bowl a few years ago that they lost. But I saw some people saying Cincy choked, and I want to know, Logan, what is your definition of choke, and what does it mean to choke? Because in my case, I don't choke just because they were a higher seed. I think, in my mind, since they had a lead, but Columbus looked more dangerous, I can't consider it a choke, right? 2-0 is the hardest lead to have in soccer. So I don't know. I feel like sometimes people just say choke whenever a big team loses. But what's your definition of a choke?
I would say if there's anything that's if there's a mistake that's made that looks like it's out of character for people, or even in character for people that typically make mistakes when the going gets tough, but it wasn't like they were making these like they were costly errors, but they weren't making them in a way that it looked like they were just completely crashing under pressure. It looked like Columbus was the better team. And like you said, Jordan, just so happens in soccer, you can go up 2-0 and not be the better team on the field that night. So that seems to be the way that they looked. And Columbus, man, I'm telling you, when they played Orlando, I felt like they were under attack all night. Like Columbus put them under pressure constantly. They had 6 or 7
They
guys
did
in
this
the
for
box most of the
120
game.
minutes.
Right.
120
Yes.
minutes they did this.
Yeah, and Lucho Acosta, to your point, to the listener, he did come up kind of limp, but I think it was ultimately he was done. He was exhausted. Like he's carried this team for so long, and I think you get to a certain point when you're Lucho that you just can't do it. He looked like he'd cramped. It looked like he was kind of limbering, and when you do start to cramp, you kind of favor things, and then you can get into some more issues when you got legs that are tired. Which I think that's what happened. I think he ended up probably pulling something or something like that where he just didn't feel right. But well, again,
here's what I'll say as a neutral, right? Because our listener said Columbus glasses off. He's a Columbus fan living in Cincinnati or from Cincinnati. I'm guessing followed the Crew before Cincinnati was a thing. The team, not the city. Cincinnati's been a thing for a bit.
They just found out. What is that?
Well, that is a thing. I don't think Acosta coming up injured hurt that much. And what I mean by that is, I know some people were putting the blame on Acosta to be like, well, he didn't want to come out. Like, I don't care who the coach is, who the player is. If the coach can make that decision if he thinks it's hurting the team. Even if he talks to the player and the player says, I'm good, be like, you're barely walking. You're not good. I'm taking you out. But, they were kind of playing for penalties, I think, at that point. They thought he would. But he's also trying to do heel flicks while he's got like a pulled muscle. And I'm like, that's not going to work, man. But what I mean by that is if they take him off, and that matters much at all. I think Columbus still wins this game because Columbus was just constantly under fire. I mean, Acosta, yes, being injured as a whole probably did hurt them a little bit. But I think also when people say take them out, that's what cost you the game, I think is a little wrong because I think they still would have overran Cincy with the way that they were playing. And that is correct. Columbus supporter since 96. Well, congratulations.
Since their inception.
Yeah, wow. Since the inception. I like that. You should rank the crests. Rank the crests for us. Men at Work, the circle crest, and the triangle crest. Because I do not like the new crest. But anyway.
Men at Work is the best. Easily the best.
Yeah, I do like that one. Plus, I like their song Down Under, too. Okay, let's move on to the other game, LAFC versus Houston, which LAFC won 2-0. They had the lead at halftime, Hollingshead. This was another one where Houston had 70% possession away from home. But LAFC outshot them 18-10, 6 shots on goal to 5. And they get through, and the circle crest till I die. There you go. That one was so good. They really effed that up. LAFC move on. They've kind of been a team that I guess people don't really believe in. I certainly did not believe in them. I think I had Houston going through. I think you had Houston going through. Yeah. You had Crew going through, though. Oh, Logan on a 3-2 score line, by the way.
Look at that. So, I can see the future.
You win a little kudos. I don't have an actual prize for you, but you got it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so LAFC
come back for more
going
later on.
Back-to-back MLS Cup finals is where they're going. LAFC versus Diego Rossi is definitely intriguing. I want to know what neutrals think. If anybody out there wants to share their thoughts, who are you rooting for? LAFC just won it, but they're still a really new team. Crew have already two cups, right? But it's been a bit. Hasn't been that long, right? When was it? 2020, 2021 when did they beat Portland?
2020
or Seattle. They beat Seattle, right?
2019, right? Because it would have been before
No, I think
COVID.
it was during this show. I think it may have been.
It was the year we started. It was right when I started. Crew had won.
So 2020, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We started. Yeah, we started that year.
Yeah, COVID champions. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they beat Seattle that year. Because 2021 was NYCFC over Portland. That was the other. So look, we've still had.
Well, who did LAFC last year?
What?
Who did LAFC beat last year?
Who'd they beat? I don't want to
forget. Philadelphia?
I don't know. I don't recall that game at all. But so we had in the West constant years of it being the Portland or Seattle making the final, and now just throw an LAFC in there, and it's still continuing. We're still not getting different West teams in there right now, but yeah, because then the next year was Portland, NYCFC. NYCFC won that. Then you had LAFC beat Philly, and then this year you have LAFC versus the Crew. So I'll be very curious to see who are rooting for who on Twitter and stuff throughout the weekend, because I'm rooting for Columbus. I don't want to see back-to-back champions of something, like I'd much rather see somebody I'd rather see thanks for rubbing that in. Yeah, they did.
Jordan's a Philly fan, that's why I was
I'm a Philly fan, so that was rough. I was in the stadium, not LAFC stadium, but I was in the Philly stadium watching the watch along, and that broke all of our hearts. But yeah, so that was something that I'll be curious to see who they won. I'm rooting for Crew just to see somebody different win, even though it's been only 3 years since they won it. It's why I was rooting for like a Houston-Cincy final where it's been a while for both teams, but should be a good game. I think this will be a really interesting matchup.
So, Jordan, I'll quiz you. Have the Columbus Crew ever beaten LAFC? They played them 3 times.
3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say no.
You are correct. They have never beaten LAFC. And, Jordan, by the way, it hasn't been very close that they haven't beaten. Or, sorry, they did beat LAFC in 2019. I'm wrong. I don't know why. So I want you to.
You went to 2020.
Yeah. So 2019 they did beat them. So Columbus Crew has beaten them once, 4-2. LAFC, and this is weird. MLS has it as 3 over Columbus. That's not right. MLS's website's wrong. Anyway, Columbus has in the last 2 times has not scored against LAFC. LAFC beat them last year 2-0. And then in 2019, they beat them 3-0. So it's been a 5-0 slaughtering over the last 2 matches that they've had together. So it's not been pretty.
Huh.
So I'm interested, Jordan, if you're LAFC and you're going into Columbus.
That's a good question. Just play and win this thing, right? Like, I feel like they'll have less pressure on the road because they're not in front of their fans. So I could definitely see. But here's the thing, too. This team can give up goals, right? We saw that in MLS Cup last year when they had a lead against Philly, and Philly came back to take a lead. So it's definitely... I would expect Trundle is just going to go out there and be like, look, I don't give an F. We just won this thing last year. We're going to go out there and we're going to play our game. We're going to go out there and win. But I don't know. I think it depends on how the Crew respond. They're going to be at home. They're going to have their fans, and they play that high tempo. They're always pressing. They're always going. They're always attacking. That can really, I think, maybe put LAFC a little bit off their game, right? Of being like, wow, they're really coming at us. And that depends if they start out that way and just really go at them from the first whistle. When was the last time they played, you said, together against each other?
Last year.
So not even under this Nancy team.
Mm-mm. Yeah, no, this would have been, I think, Caleb Porter still.
Look, my computer's running a little slow. Can you do me a favor and look up Montreal and if they see it last year? I was trying to find something like that, but it was taking a bit.
All right. Let's go this route. Montreal. Previous season. 2022. LAFC. Let's see. Come on. It's taking forever. Okay. Let's see. Doesn't look like it.
Dang. I was wondering how Nancy's team did against them. So it's forecast to be warmer than the usual Ohio Decembers. So look at that. Our on-ground reporter, Tamayo, is that how you say it? I've butchered so many names today. So where'd you see that the Crew beat LAFC? Because I pulled up their head-to-head, and I have LAFC winning 3 out of 3, 7-0 total.
So I pulled it up on MLS. I'm telling you, the website's wrong because it says the Crew beat them.
FB Ref.
Okay, because it says the Crew beat them 4-2, and it might have been in a cup. I don't know, but it says
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because it says 4-2, and then it says Columbus has won all, or LAFC has won all 3 matches. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It literally just says right here that I don't know. MLS's website is not. It's not great.
It's really tough to find stuff like that on there for some reason. I pulled up FB Ref. I went to head-to-head. They've played 3 times. Once in 18, once in 19, once in last year. All 7-0, and 2 of the times Crew were at home. Tomao. Oh, Tomao. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mao is the leader of China.
Yeah. Okay.
Ma.
Well, there you go. These are on the ground in Ohio right now, or at least knows the background of Ohio weather and knows how the weather is going to be. But I always think it's funny when people say stuff like what I'm saying right now, like, oh, they've never beaten them, because obviously it's a whole different team. You got different players, like Chucho wasn't there, right? You didn't have Nancy, all that kind of stuff. So it definitely doesn't matter. The players are not thinking this at all, because like I said, none of these players are the same. So if Columbus comes out and scores early, that'll be their first goal ever against LAFC in MLS play. That's pretty fun. That's great. And if they don't score at all, then you're starting to think, okay, maybe there's a curse against them in LAFC.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Cincinnati curse.
Yep. The Crew led the league in goals, 67.
Look, so this is why you can't take these things seriously, by the way, because they're the leader of goals is Diamande and Carlos Vela.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Vela is still there. Diamande is now in Toronto. So that doesn't really matter. Assists was Lee Win and Latif Blessing. And again, they're no longer there. But yes, Bowanga is going to be the main problem. And he's the Golden Boot winner, right? So, like, while we've said LAFC haven't looked the same, they're still scoring. They're still playing pretty well. This is one of those circumstances where if they hadn't won it last year, this would feel like their year. And the reason I say that is because usually the is like the best don't win it all. We just saw it with Cincy. And they won the Supporters Shield last year, LAFC, and won it. And you're thinking, oh, maybe they won't win, right? Because sometimes the 1 seed doesn't win. This year, they had what they would consider a down year, I think, right? St. Louis so much has won the West. That's how bad of a year LAFC had. And LAFC then get into the playoffs, get all the way to the final again, and they have the top goal scorer. If you're an LAFC fan, you're feeling pretty darn good, I think. I think both fans will feel like this game is there for them, right? I don't think any of these two teams are thinking, oh, we're not going to be able to win this game, because they both had to defeat LAFC hasn't really had to defeat that many good teams, right? But when you look at what Columbus had to do, they had to overcome Cincy. They had to overcome Atlanta, who was playing pretty well at times. Had to overcome Orlando, who was the second best team in the East. And then now they're going to go up against LAFC, who won it all last year. While LAFC had to kind of, what I would say in the playoffs, reclaim their title in the sense of, I know we weren't that great this year compared to our previous history, but now we're going to show you that we can do it again. And if they do it again, this will be our first back-to-back champ since maybe one of the LA years. I think LA won it back-to-back in like 2013, 2014. I'm speaking Galaxy, obviously, because LA is not LAFC. They weren't around then. I'm trying to look up the winners again because I used to have all these memorized. Hold on. Winners back to back. No, because Galaxy. Yes, sorry. Galaxy won in 2011 and 2012 against Dynamo in back to back years. I think that's the first time we will have back to back winner since then. So you're looking at 10 years ago, 11 years. And before that, it was 2006, 2007 when Houston beat the Revs in back-to-back MLS Cups. I was at the second one at RFK in 2007. Jimmy Eat World was the halftime show. I like sharing that little tidbit. But yeah, so I guess let's start moving into predictions then. And Mr. Nostradamus, who said the Crew was going to win 3-2. Let's ignore that you said Houston was going to win the other game. What is your prediction here going into Crew versus LAFC for MLS Cup 2023?
I think this is going to be one of the best matchups that we could have had. LAFC, I think, defensive, play well defensively. Chiellini, you've got Ryan Hollingshead, who's arguably one of the best defenders in all of MLS history. Oh, choke there. LAFC, they weren't impressive on the road. But it's really hard to win on the road in MLS, which is kind of where I'm going to steer this to. LAFC is great defensively. They rely heavily on Bouanga to get involved. Coming into a one-off game like this, I feel like the Crew will have to prepare for Denis Bouanga to be the guy that's going to get this attack off the ground. Carlos Vela, his time's limited. I think you might see this might be the last game he's played in MLS. So I'm interested to kind of see how the LAFC attacking force comes in, because I think it's going to be very difficult to come into a very hostile environment at Lower.com Field. But I think LAFC stands a good chance because they've got the experience. Now, flip it over to the other side. I think the Crew have one of the most exciting attacking forces that we've seen, especially in these playoffs. I think they've looked the most dominant. The fact that they got some 20 some shots off of a Cincinnati team, and yes, they were missing Miazga, but it's still a pretty decent defense. And I think ultimately they were just too powerful, and the amount of guys that get into the box, I think, is going to create a problem. Maxime Crépeau is going to be very busy. He makes some of the best saves. He's got one of the highest stats as far as saves per game in the playoffs. He's way above average on the saves that he makes, and he's an incredible goalkeeper. That's why they went out and got him. This is a tough one, but I'm going to say the advantage goes to the Crew because they're playing at home, because they're playing in their element. And to be quite honest, like you talk about this in sports all the time, especially in these one-off games, it's about momentum. And I think the Crew have the most momentum. You're going into your stadium and your home and the environment that you create. I think it's going to be a very fast-paced game. And I think that definitely favors the Crew more so than LAFC. LAFC, they like to kind of hunker down sometimes and play good defense. And that's going to be tough against this Crew team because this Crew team is just going to put goals or shots on goal. I'm going to say, Jordan, it ends up being a high-scoring MLS Cup. I'm going to say it ends up 3-2 Crew. Going with that same scoreline because I feel pretty confident about it.
Dang, I just wrote down 3-2 as well, so I'm changing mine.
4-3.
They have one loss at home, the Crew, right? All season long. One loss, 4 draws, 12 wins. I believe in Wilfried Nancy. I do. It's tough to win back-to-back MLS Cups in this league. Like I said, the last time that happened 11 years ago when MLS was in a totally different era that it happened 2 times in a 6-year span. This is a different time. They have this Nancy hire, if they win this thing, is going to be like the best thing they've ever done. And we'll put them in good position going forward. And I have Crew winning 3-1 is what I'm going to go with here. I just deleted a goal for LAFC. I think that is, I think the Crew have it, man. I underestimated them in 2021 when I picked Seattle. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to underestimate them again. But you could say I'm underestimating LAFC again because I picked Philly last year and I'm picking the Crew this year. And I promise it's no personal grudge because I actually like LAFC and the fact that they actually try to put out competitive teams and deep teams, unlike some of these other teams out there. So I don't really harbor any ill will to LAFC, but I just think at home, the stats say the Crew are better at home and LAFC is not good this year on the road. Crew can also do it on the road. Not that they have to, but they've played some of these playoffs on the road. So they're feeling pretty darn good. And with that coach, with the way that they're playing at home in front of their fans for a big occasion, put it down on Wilfried Nancy, 3-1 Columbus Crew. And I'm not saying put it down in the sense of like put on it because I don't say that because I'm not a big gambler. I'm just saying like I am putting my faith on the Crew. So don't
Jordan,
come to me if you lose money.
Yeah. This I guess we don't really talk about them too much as one of those teams or blueprints. And maybe you mentioned it before, but you cut out between when you said Philly and I forget who you named. Philly and Cincinnati. I forget who you said before. Or like
I said Philly, Cincy, Nashville is modeling myself after. If I'm talking about like getting a coach, like getting a GM from another team, getting a coach, you could definitely say the Crew as well, right?
Yeah.
But like I don't know how you can model yourself after the Crew in the sense of if you're DC United, I guess is my point there because you can't find Wilfried Nancy's on trees. So I feel like he's a big part of the reason. We saw this season, they start off 4-1 loss and then they've just been getting better and better and better. So for me, I was talking more about like structurally, but I mean, this team has been fantastic.
Yeah. And I think people that are not Crew fans always forget that they got rid of their best player. Their best player, he'd had injury issues and wasn't necessarily the same player as he exited, but Lucas Elorion was quite the force. And the fact that you can just lose him mid-season and keep going and be even better, that's nuts to me.
But what helps with that is when you also bring in like Chucho, right? Like they brought him in to
right.
work with Zelleran, and then
Right. Diego Rossi's come in and played
yeah,
well.
and then
Like,
you bring in Diego Rossi. I mean, that would be really funny. Bonus thing to watch. Speaking of Don Garber from Columbus supporters after the match.
You think Anthony Precourt?
Precourt is not even paying attention right now. He's too busy.
Screen smoke, baby.
he's too busy not paying attention to what's going on in Austin. I guess.
Oh, Jordan throwing some strays out there. At least it wasn't the fire this time.
I think most Columbus fans, when Precourt was in charge, would have told Austin fans how it was going to go down, and they're so far much better off with their new ownership, I think, and the way this team is in this position with Precourt. I don't think. But yeah, so you'll get some jeering for Garber, as Tomau points out, because of the whole Save Columbus thing. Also, just commissioners get booed everywhere, I feel like. So we'll see. All right. Any last thoughts on MLS Cup? Are you doing anything special? I'm going over a friend's house. We're going to probably have some food and watch the game.
No, I'm not as exciting as you, so I'll be texting you.
And that friend is not you. Sorry.
All right. Well, I was expecting you to come down. I had food ready. A couple days early. No, that'd be a long drive for you. But no, nothing too exciting. Just going to watch the game. I enjoy watching these MLS Cup finals because every single one that I've been a part of, Jordan, has been really exciting. So
they're usually pretty good.
I hope this is not a letdown, but man, I'm telling you, like to have that Portland NYCFC game, which would end down to penalties, I believe. And then same thing with penalties.
It was right before penalties, I think, right?
I thought it went to penalties. No, it went to penalties. I remember the penalty shootout. Or was it?
My memory's not what it used to be anymore. You're right. They won on penalties 4-2.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember that. And then the Gareth Bale incident. So
the what now?
The get Bale. But yeah, no, they've not let me down so far. Even the MLS's Back Cup that I first watched, that was a lot of fun too.
The League's Cup final was really fun too. Nashville, Miami was awesome. They went to goalkeepers on penalties. I mean, that was great.
They've all been great, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Cincy Columbus was so much fun as well. We were talking about that on text, and it's like, that's why I think this game's going to be good too. A big reason why it was so good is that Columbus was constantly pressuring and going, and I think that'll be what they do here. So here we are, December 9th, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, according to MLSsoccer.com. They meant Pacific for the 1 o'clock, so don't get confused there.
Mistakes everywhere on that website.
Yeah, they put 4 p.m. Eastern Time / 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's like,
that's gonna be
what time am I turning in?
Is that a double header? That's kind of wild.
Yeah, you know what? They wanted to do a best of 2 as well, which means you just have to win one, right? It's on Fox. It's on Fox Deportes, and it's also free on Apple TV. So you can watch it on Apple TV for free, which is what I would suggest instead of watching Fox, which isn't as good coverage-wise. And it's, of course, taking place at Lower.com Field in Columbus, and they're both the 3 seeds as they go on to MLS Cup Final. So last year we had, the 2 1 seeds? This year we got the 2 3 seeds.
Yeah. That's wild.
All right. Well, for along with us or listening along, have a great rest of your week. We will catch you next time when we break down the champion of MLS Cup 2023, and then we'll tease some of the fun off-season stuff that we have coming your way, like our report card episode, where we will give report cards to the teams and say, did they do everything that they could have? Was it a good season? And we also, of course, have our MLS Mount Rushmore coming up at some point as well. So we'll probably record a few of those and then kind of dole them out over the holidays as we take a break, as we prepare for the first preseason game in January that Miami already shared. We'll take a look at that. But have a great rest of your week. We will catch you next time. Enjoy MLS Cup Final.